Hi, I'm Tom Doyle, Associate Professor of Justice and Interim Director of the Fox Rothschild Center for Law and Society here at Community College of Philadelphia. Welcome to our perspective series on CCP TV, the educational channel of Community College of Philadelphia. In this episode, Adjunct Professor David Travaskis interviews Wesley Payne. Mr. Payne, a partner at White & Williams LLC in Philadelphia and a champion of pro bono service, serves as the chair of the Pennsylvania Bar Association's Military and Veterans Affairs Committee and will soon head the board of Pennsylvania Legal Aid Network. Please enjoy what I'm sure you'll find to be a very interesting and informative conversation.
Welcome to the Fox Rothschild Center for Law and Society's Perspective series on CCP TV, the educational channel of Community College of Philadelphia. I'm David Travaskis, Adjunct Professor in the Paralegal Studies program. Today it is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished guest, Wesley Payne. Wes, it's great to have you here.
Great to be here, David. Thank you for having me.
And can you just introduce yourself to the audience and tell them a little bit about your background?
Surely. I am a partner at White & Williams, a law firm here in town, and as part of my pro bono activities, what I enjoy participating in are working with homeless individuals and particularly homeless veterans. I am a member of the Pennsylvania Legal Aid Network, its current president-elect, and I do a lot of work with the Pennsylvania Bar Association's Veterans Affairs Committee.
And that's what we really want to talk about today, is this pro bono work you do. I do, though, want to ask you, what do you do for your main work? What kind of law do you practice?
I am a civil practitioner, so I practice all aspects of civil litigation, from little dinky auto accidents to big coverage actions where insurance companies are actually fighting with one another who's responsible for what.
But this isn't the kind of work you do in your pro bono work.
No, that is usually a lot more people-oriented with respect to actually helping people get either assistance they need or in the right path for what they need to get for their lives.
And you said at the beginning that you were focused on helping veterans and military personnel. Are you a veteran yourself?
Yes, I am. I served in the U.S. Army from 1988 to 1991.
And what did you do?
I was originally commissioned as an armor officer, and I served primarily as a JAG officer or attorney for the military.
So, but when you came into private practice, you were looking out for things that you could do. How did you come upon helping vets?
I became interested in actually helping out at a homeless shelter, which had a number of veterans in it just because of where it was located. It was an all-male homeless shelter. And I became interested not only in helping the homeless individuals completely, or in total, whatever their legal issues were, but a significant number of those individuals were veterans. So I became more involved with getting them and their benefits or getting them back on the right track.
And how does somebody who's a veteran end up to be homeless? It always puzzles me, because you have GI benefits, you have other kinds of resources that you can access. How is it that these guys end up on the street?
Well, there's a lot of factors. One, most of these individuals, even though you consider them homeless, are very proud individuals. They had served in the military. They are very strong-willed individuals. And a lot of them, quite frankly, don't like to ask for help. The second sort of aspect is there are a number of individuals that after they have returned, not just from our most current wars, but literally I have veterans that come back from the Vietnam era, have had different things change in their lives and as a result end up being homeless. I have a gentleman right now who is quite frankly a Korean War veteran, owned his own home, is suffering from certain aspects of dementia and forgot to pay his property taxes for several years. He ended up losing his home because of that process and in a homeless shelter. There are also the aspects that many veterans who have served, and especially in combat, do experience a higher rate of drug and alcohol addiction or abuse, and that will lead to homelessness for many of them.
Now, this Korean veteran you talked about who lost his home with his dementia, is there anything you as a lawyer can do to help him?
Well, what we were able to do with that particular case was to identify the house, identify the mental health condition. We were able to get him involved back with the VA. Once again, a lot of vets don't ask for any help along those lines. I would love to tell you that we caught it just in time before the home was sold, but we did not. But we were able to get him housing and able to get him out of the homeless shelter. He's a very pleasant gentleman, but requires assistance, so he's just not in an apartment somewhere. He's actually in assisted living, and part of that is due to receiving his VA benefits.
So if he hadn't met up with you, he'd still maybe be homeless.
I would suspect he would still be in a shelter, and these were day-to-day shelters, not long-term shelters. And that's where we run our legal clinics. We literally show up, and you never know what you're going to get. There's going to be 30 to 40 guys standing there. Sometimes they know their problem, sometimes they really don't know what their problem is, and it's your job to sort of figure out what the problem is and then how to solve it for them as best possible.
Now, you said we show up. Who's the we?
This shelter has been adopted by my firm. I run the program, but I have a number of other attorneys in my office that actually, on a month, not a monthly basis, but every other month, we actually just go down to the shelter and really run a triage clinic and take on all comers on a pro bono basis. So whatever their problems are, whatever they have to do, we will look at their legal cases. A lot of times there are cases that can be helped immediately. Others are just a lot more long term. You know, if say you get a veteran who needs VA benefits, medical and maybe financial, that process, because it involves the VA, takes a little bit longer than making a call to get someone hooked or put in the system for like welfare benefits or something of that nature.
Do you find, though, that the VA is receptive to these calls? Is there really a responsiveness to it? Because what you're describing are a lot of older veterans from wars long ago.
Well, you have the older veterans from wars long ago, but you do run into the younger ones from even the current two wars. We can't call them current anymore, since one is completed and one is winding down. But you find them as well. Generally, I find the VA to be accepting of these individuals. They do try to help. However, there is a VA backlog, which is about 3 years long right now. Don't want to quote that as the exact time frame, but the VA handles about 1 million claims per year, and they get in literally 1 million claims per year. And that just creates a significant backlog. But with many of the veterans that are combat veterans, the VA has done its best to try to streamline some of its services, especially the medical services, so that even the younger veterans suffering from PSTD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, will be able to get assistance with regards to medical treatment. And that is very key and very important. I also find that they're very helpful in the veteran court area, where veterans who may have been picked up for minor or misdemeanor type of criminal charges have the option of, if they're accepted into the program, to be put in a deferred program where they're getting their treatment that they need, and at the end of that program, if they live up to it and do everything, that their criminal charge may be expunged or dismissed at the appropriate time. And so far, that program has been very successful.
And actually, that was another topic that I did want to talk to you about. This Veterans Court is something that has been set up for, it appears to be really to help the veterans from the two most recent wars, the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan. There wasn't any kind of court like that after Vietnam where veterans could get special treatment in the courts.
No, there wasn't. And I prefer not to look at it as special treatment, but necessary treatment, because the whole goal isn't to quote unquote cut the veteran an unreasonable break, but to prevent recidivism or recurring criminal activity. And if you can catch people early, specialty courts such as the Veterans Courts have a great track record of showing that if you catch the underlying problem, treat the underlying problem, whether it is alcoholism or some form of self-medicating drug treatments, and get the person into the proper treatment, that the recidivism or recurrent rate of crime goes down substantially. So somebody makes a mistake, they get the help they need, they are no longer a burden on society. We're not carrying them in prison. They are actually back out in the general community and being productive. And that's a greater society goal in my mind. I'm a big fan of the Veterans Courts. I think currently in Pennsylvania we have approximately 15 counties that run Veterans Courts. I would love to see those courts become statewide. I would also love to see sentencing within the courts take into consideration things such as post-traumatic stress syndrome with respect to veterans in their sentencing guidelines as well. I think that will also help us cut down on the recidivism rate and help us make these individuals or allow these individuals to become productive members of society again.
Well, and I know the Veterans Court here in Philadelphia is a very big and active court, and it is championed by our Chief Justice, Ron Castile, who is a Marine veteran, and also Justice Seamus McCaffrey, who is a veteran as well. Do you see that court regularly? Are you over there volunteering there as well?
There are a number of ways to volunteer, and probably the one that most people think about is everybody volunteer to being a defense attorney for these individuals, and that's what's not required. What is really required are what we call mentors, and they're normally attorneys who are former veterans. They are not required to represent someone in court. In fact, what you really want the individual to do is accept that they have an issue, accept that they have a problem, accept that there's help available, and not pursue a criminal prosecution or defense in that matter, but to actually have the case deferred. And these mentors, and what we've done and what has been, I think, really helpful, is that these mentors aren't social workers. They're not there to call the VA for anything. In fact, the VA's representative is already in the courthouse during the day of the Veterans Court. But they're the support mechanism through if you need to make a call, if you want to talk to somebody, if you want to make sure your bearings are straight. Those positions are invaluable, and it's pretty much been shown that because of that relationship and because most of the individuals that are involved as mentors are former military themselves, that there's a much quicker bond between the individuals who are going through the process. They complete their, what I would say, assignments, because it's not just you just go in a program. You have specific assignments and specific goals to meet. So if it's going down and doing your meetings at the clinic or whatever your goals are and how many you're supposed to do and what you're supposed to achieve, you got to remember most of these veterans are goal-oriented individuals. They've been taught to be goal-oriented individuals. So giving those goals to meet, and they meet them and giving somebody to watch over from a distance, but a very close distance to assess and go through, they complete those goals, they complete those programs very well. And we've shown over the last few years that potential of somebody coming back into the system or into the criminal justice system is greatly reduced. So, I mean, I know this is a little bit of a pitch, but I really want to make a pitch for the people to sign up to be mentors because it doesn't take a whole lot of your time and you can do a great deal of good.
This mentoring you talked about and made the pitch for, obviously lawyers, veterans who are lawyers are great mentors. Can a veteran who's not a lawyer sign up to be a mentor?
Yes, we like attorneys only because I deal with attorneys on a normal basis, and that's what I have access to. But it's not limited to attorneys to be mentors. Anyone who, quite frankly, has a military background can be a mentor. And more importantly, you really don't even need the military background if you're willing to put in the time. It's just that it's been shown a little bit that military individuals relate a little bit better to other military individuals. I'm thinking of a case in which I represented a gentleman, I won't use his name obviously, but his nickname was Cowboy. Cowboy had served in the Army. He was a early Afghanistan veteran, and had pretty much been living on the streets, wasn't admitted to PHA housing. And the reason I saw him was because he was kicked out of PHA housing because he possessed a small amount of marijuana, and not even in the housing, about a block away. And the PHA rules are very strict, no drugs. So he actually came to see me with respect to not the criminal matter, but with respect to trying to get him back into PHA housing. We went through the system, but went through what happened, realized that he also had a criminal hearing. I must admit that the Philadelphia court system, and specifically the veteran court system, caught it up front that he was a veteran, looked at the charge, offered him the opportunity to participate in the program. With that, I could go back to PHA, explain to them the circumstance, tell them he was in the program. They deferred making a final decision about kicking him out of the PHA housing. He completed his program. His charge was expunged. We went back to PHA. PHA looked at it, the whole totality of everything, allowed him to remain in PHA housing. And the wonderful part about this is throughout the process, he actually ended up finding a job. So just keeping in touch with him, making sure he stayed on program, because when I met him the first time, he had missed his first appointment for his drug rehabilitation class. And what we had to do was to explain to him, hey, look, this is important. This is what you need to do. He was very receptive to it, engaged in the process. I think it gave him a great benefit from the process, because obviously the first time I saw him, his statement was, well, I was one of 8 guys and it was just there. The typical avoidance of the issue. But having him face it, go through it, I mean, it was a minor issue, obviously, but face it, go through it, go through the process, it just helped Cowboy get himself back in line.
Well, and the consequences of even a minor situation, as you mentioned, losing the housing authority housing, losing the opportunity to have the public shelter, is huge. So you have Cowboy, because of your intervention, instead of being somebody on the street, somebody who gets further in the system, as somebody now who's done with the system and has a job and in his housing.
Yeah, but what I would like to emphasize, it isn't me doing it, it's that Cowboy, after we've talked, realizing it had to be Cowboy to do it. And that's really what our purpose and goal is to have the individual realize that in all essence, they have value, they have worth, and they are worth the effort. And not only worth your effort, but worth their own effort. And once that is sort of rekindled in an individual, it's amazing what will result. I mean, because otherwise, you know, the other end of it, Cowboy doesn't go to his rehab, takes the conviction for the possession of a small amount. You're probably not going to go to jail for that. He just loses his PHA housing, and he's just back on the street, and then going from shelter to shelter. And that doesn't do us any good as a society. But to have him sort of face up to it, do what he needed to get done, be there to assist him along the way, just a phone call here and every now and then, checking in. Hey, how you doing? Did you make your appointment on Saturday? Or calling on Friday, reminding them that, hey, Saturday at 2 o'clock, you remember you got to be there. And remember, you're supposed to be able to talk about this. What do you think you're going to say? You know, those little kind of things, you know, they never show up on anybody's statistics, but they're of a great benefit and great help. You know?
Well, and this is what I think is so interesting about the Veterans Court, the way that we do it here in Philadelphia with the mentoring. And it was interesting, early on when I was asking you about that, I said special privileges, special opportunity, and you were quick to say, no, this isn't something special, and describe it. And yet it really is something that the average citizen, the people who are listening to this who aren't veterans, probably wish they could get for family members of their own who have had problems like this. It sounds like a wonderful model. But why does it work so well with the military? You were talking about that before. Why do you think it works so well with our veterans?
I think the reason it works very well, let me take a step back. There are other various forms of specialty courts, such as drug intervention courts as an example. And they have a good success rate, but just not as high as the veteran success rates. And I think what the distinguishing factor there is that individuals who have served in the military are used to a chain of command, a chain of sort of authority, and are used to being able to work within that chain of command, that chain of authority. And that chain also instills in them that sort of self-worth and self-value that I talked about earlier, that you have to rekindle in person. You can't give it to them, you rekindle it. They've built it into themselves. And you'll find in many circumstances, one of the reasons I think a lot of veterans don't like to ask for help is because they feel that they are a little ashamed that they have let that system down, because that system is part of them. And reuniting them to that system in a very positive way not only reignites that sort of same passion within them for that military system, but it reminds them of the goals that they've had when they were in the military. It gives them the opportunity to once again rekindle all those same sort of thought processes within their brain, and it just works out really wonderfully.
What's the mechanics of the system? If I commit a crime in Philadelphia and I get picked up, how do I end up in Veterans Court and not a regular court?
It's a little bit complex from the administrative side, and I got to give that credit to the court, because basically the court identifies if you are or are not a veteran.
So the first thing they do is they check everybody who's picked up if they're a veteran or not. And then all the veterans are looked at whether they would qualify for this system?
Well, the court identifies them, correct. Then they're looked at based on the type of crime. I mean, obviously, if someone commits a murder, you're probably not going to be in line for a deferment type program. But if it is a minor crime, usually a nonviolent crime.
Nonviolent crimes, drugs.
Yeah.
What other kinds of things come in?
I like to leave it at minor crimes, only because a lot of times you can look at the circumstances and you don't want a specific charge to be the ruling factor. You want to take a look at the totality of circumstances.
So I might have been charged with an assault in a bar fight that I still might be able to qualify for vet courts if it was the kind of fight that's not a serious
Well, actually, what I was really thinking about are charges like terroristic threats. You think of terrorist threats as an individual as, someone said, I'm going to go bomb a building. But actually, if you get into an argument, confrontation with someone at a bar and say something such of the nature, I'm going to kill you, that's a terroristic threat. And when you look at those type charges, you want to look at the totality of the circumstances. And I've got to give the Philadelphia court system great credit, because they do look at the totality of the circumstances. Was there a physical altercation? Was someone seriously injured? Or was this merely two guys yelling at each other and a little pushing involved? Now, obviously, if there's a big physical altercation, someone's injured and, seriously hurt, has to be taken to the hospital, yada, 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 and that becomes a felony level type case, that would not go into deferment. Those are other mechanisms to handle those cases. But if it's a minor incident, and that's why I like to leave it at minor incident, then that has the opportunity for that deferment. Also, there are those type matters where a weapon may be alleged to be involved, but what really constituted the weapon, all those little factors, and they're very good at screening at the Philadelphia court system, because it's just not the court itself. When I refer to the court, I'm talking about the police officers, I'm talking about the prosecutors, I'm talking about the court, the judges, and the court system itself, all working together to make that group and trying to be as fair as possible.
Now, you talked about working in the homeless shelter, and you talked about vet courts. You actually serve a statewide role with Military and Veterans Affairs. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Currently, I chair the Pennsylvania Bar Association's Veterans Affairs or Military Affairs Committee, and that is a statewide organization. It tries to reach out to all 67 counties within the Commonwealth. I think you probably know the statistics better than I, but that operation through a number of years has attempted to serve veterans and military personnel with a number of different problems they may come up with. I think on a yearly basis there are about 500 inquiries that are made of the committee, and they can vary from small little questions about how do I do something to get my affairs taken care of before going into the on active duty, to custody type issues that pop up, to issues that may involve veterans benefits with the VA. So it's a very wide spectrum, and is also throughout the state. There are also those cases that involve people that have been charged with criminal activity and trying to find attorneys to assist them into handling those cases, mostly on a pro bono, but sometimes on a reduced fee basis.
This statewide effort is also, as I understand it, trying to push so that there would be uniform vet courts everywhere.
Yes. We currently have 67 counties in Pennsylvania, but only 15 of those counties have veterans courts. It would be great if we had a veterans court in every county, because then that deferment process could take great effect. And Pennsylvania is rather unique. We don't have a section of the state where our veterans come from. We draw from everybody. It's amazing. It can be Philadelphia County, Pike County, Allegheny County. I guess the patriotism of Pennsylvania is great no matter where you're from. And it would be great to have those same benefits for everybody in every county, so that you just don't have a veterans court in Pittsburgh or Philadelphia, but you can have one in Carbon County, because there are veterans in Carbon County as well.
So I want to thank you for being here with us today. I want to thank you for your service, both in the military and your service for helping the veterans since then, Wes, and that's going to be about all the time we have today. So I want to thank you, and thank all of you watching for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. You've been watching the Fox Rothschild Center for Law and Society's Perspective series on CCP TV, the educational channel of the Community College of Philadelphia. I'm David Travaskis, adjunct professor in the Paralegal Studies program. For more information, please contact us here at the college, and we'll see you next time on CCP TV.